Would you be the jerk for telling your own dad to freak off and dragging his stepdaughter into it? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my dad's husband I don't want him to adopt me and his bringing up my dead father is not winning me over? I, 16-year-old male, have two dads. One died before I was born, Daddy. He was my non-bio father, and his best friend was my parent's surrogate. She's my auntie Giga. My dad is my bio parent and my daddy's widower, and yeah, I say dad and daddy and still say daddy as a 16-year-old guy. Dad always referred to daddy as daddy to me, so I use it. A month before I was born, daddy died. My dad changed completely that day. Because of where we live, even back then, my daddy was still able to be recognized on my birth certificate. It was a fight and involved the courts, but it happened. It was really uncommon back then, but he won the case thanks to Auntie Giga and other family members recognizing my two dads. I grew up always knowing about Daddy, and I always cherished the connection to him. I was always glad my dad won the right for the both of them to be legally my parents. I was also always treated like their son, not just dads or not dads and Auntie Gigas. When I was 4, my dad tried to date again, and he met Sam. They dated for about 3 months, but Dad wasn't ready and Sam didn't like what he saw. He felt jealous and insecure that he wasn't being brought in as another dad for me. They reconnected when I was 8 and got married when I was 12. My relationship with Sam is complicated and weird, and he wants to adopt me, but I don't want him to be my dad. I don't want to be adopted by him or to have him take care of me if I become an orphan. He has always made it a point to bring up the fact Daddy wasn't my bio father in the first place, and how legally it was a miracle he's even on my birth certificate. I hate it. It feels so gross. He has told me at least I'll know him, while Daddy is someone who's just saintly in my mind because I wasn't allowed to process only having one parent. Even though I know I was raised by one parent, but I still had two, he just wasn't here. But I read the book he was putting together for me. He documented a lot of the parenting journey and surrogacy stuff and the pregnancy until his death. He was so excited. He loved me so much. He wanted me so badly. On Father's Day, we had a big fight over adoption. Dad was out and Sam brought up the adoption to me. He told me he's tired of feeling like an outsider because I always treat him like Dad's spouse instead of my stepdad or my parent. I told him because that's what he is and he has to learn to accept that. I told him nothing changed for me. He told me it's stupid because I love one stepdad so much more. I told him Daddy is more than just a stepdad, and then I told him I don't want him to adopt me ever, and bringing up Daddy isn't winning me over. I told him if anything, he's making me wish Dad had found someone better. Dad doesn't know what happened, but things have been tense since, and Sam said I went too far. Am I the jerk? I think as long as OP's dad is actually going to be on the same page as them, if they tell them, it's pretty important for everybody to be on the same page, so that hopefully this whole thing can be addressed and handled. Maybe they can salvage this and try to work with this with their partner before even engaging with them as a complete non-starter for OP. Ready Replacement 181 wrote, "You need to talk to your dad and tell him everything. Does your dad know what Sam is doing? Sam has no right to try to erase your daddy regardless if you met him or not. He still is and always will be your daddy. You're not the jerk. Sam, however, is the jerk." OP responded saying, "Dad doesn't know? I always knew this would be the end of their marriage if he knew. I want my dad to be happy, so I kept quiet. But I guess that's not such a great idea anymore, especially if it comes out in a more explosive way eventually." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for wearing an American flag speedo to a pool party and embarrassing my girlfriend? My girlfriend, 27-year-old female, and I, 28-year-old male, have been together for about 18 months. We don't fight often, but our biggest fight came earlier this year when I questioned what she wanted to wear to a groom's dinner at my friend's wedding. I was in the wedding party and we had spent the entire day setting things up for the wedding. The groom's dinner was that night and was going to be a very casual affair since everyone was sweaty and tired from working all day. My girlfriend arrived later in the day and asked me if I could meet her at our hotel so she could change. When we got to the hotel, she put on a pretty fancy dress, kind of like a cocktail dress that she would wear to a club. I told her that the groom's dinner was going to be casual since everyone had worked all day and people weren't going to be dressing up. She scolded me and told me that I don't get to tell her what to wear. She said she'll give me a pass that one time, but I should never again criticize or question what she wants to wear. I dropped it, but when we got to the dinner and she saw how overdressed she was, She got embarrassed, even though people commented on how good she looked. This past weekend, we were invited to a pool party at my girlfriend's friend's house. Since it was close to the 4th of July, I decided to break out my American flag speedo that I got in college as a joke. I was trying it on before we left to make sure it still fit okay, and my girlfriend saw me. She asked me what I was wearing and told me that I can't wear that. I asked her why not, and she told me it's gross, revealing, and unattractive. I told her the same thing she told me at the wedding, that she doesn't get to tell me what to wear. She told me this is not the same situation at all and I'm going to make a fool of myself. I told her that if I'm wearing this speedo, clearly I don't take myself too seriously, and that I'll bring a spare swimsuit if she's going to make such a big deal out of it. When we got to the pool party, I took off my shorts to reveal the speedo and got a few laughs from my girlfriend's friends. I started playing some pool volleyball with some of the other guys there and just went about my day having fun. My girlfriend spent most of the day inside by herself or with a few friends. She barely came out by the pool. One of the few times she came out, she pulled me aside and asked me to please change out of the speedo because I'm embarrassing her. I told her that she's the only one who's making a big deal out of this and that if I'm in the pool, no one notices or cares anyway. She went back inside after that. When we got home that night, she wouldn't talk to me, so I gave her some space. She came to me a bit later and asked me if I was going to apologize to her. I told her I don't feel like I have anything to apologize for, and she told me I embarrassed her all day even after she told me to take off the speedo. I told her she needs to loosen up because she's making a big deal out of a little fun joke, but she thinks I'm the jerk. I mean, it doesn't really sound like OP and their partner are all that on the same page here, but regardless, OP's not the jerk and OP's right. And I would even argue in the first situation, OP wasn't necessarily trying to control what they wore. They were just trying to heavily imply that there's a dress code that other people are conforming to that she is implicitly ignoring and overdressing for. Not that OP was standing there going, "What are you wearing? Wear something else." Not Creative at All 16 wrote, "Not the jerk. You're right, she's trying to control what you wear. You were right to shut her down, just like she did when you tried to stop her from going overdressed to an event and were told to kick rocks. She can't tell you that you can't control her wardrobe and then turn around and do exactly the same thing to you. She was also the one who was determined to have a bad time because of your choice of clothing." Character Toe 2137 added, "And to be fair, OP wasn't trying to control what she wore in the first incident. He provided her information so she could make an informed choice, and girlfriend overreacted." Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my sister there were consequences to not helping out our mom? So my mom and my sister live a state over. Around a year ago, my mom's home flooded and she needed a place to stay until the insurance fixed it all. My sister lives near mom, 30 minutes away, and mom went to her first for a place to stay. She refused and basically told her to kick rocks. They had a good relationship before this. She won't even let mom stay for a few days so one of us could pick her up. I drove 7 hours to pick mom up and she stayed with me for 2 months until her home was good. The family was ticked at my sister and it resulted in a discussion about how she never helps anyone out. Everyone has experienced it at some point where she didn't care enough to help out. My biggest example that pertains to me is when my car broke down and my sister refused to pick me up, so I had to walk home and hitch a ride home. This was before Uber took off. I got home and she was on the phone dead scrolling. Everyone in the family has examples. We all decided to not help my sister anymore. This is the issue now. She needs a place to stay since she's moving to a new city and her lease on her home ended. So about a month to stay with someone before she can move into her new apartment in the city. Everyone has turned her down. She called me and asked if she could stay with me. I told her no and she started crying why the family won't help her out. I told her that there are consequences to not helping out our mom when she needed it. She called me heartless and hung up. I would say wholeheartedly not the jerk, and when it comes to relationships, I would easily say when one side isn't putting in any effort, it's understandable why the whole relationship in general vanishes, disappears, or there's no interest in helping you out in return. Just like if you want to maintain an active friendship or relationship with someone, it can't just be one side always being the one to reach out, initiate hangouts. Most times it'll fall by the wayside eventually. Not Creative at All 16 added, "Not the jerk. People who never help anyone else out always stump me. It takes very little to be a decent human being. Your sister let that title leave her long ago, it sounds like. And then to be surprised when the "but we're family" argument doesn't work is funny. You can't refuse to help people every time they ask, but then put your surprised Pikachu face when people won't help you when you need it. I'm not saying that in order for someone to help, they need to help out first. I'm not that transactional. But in this case, it sounds like this is a common thing, and her reasons for not helping out are flimsy at best. And in that case, I wouldn't lift a finger to help. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to sleep on a pull-out couch during vacation? I, 28-year-old female, planned a family trip with my parents and my brother, 25-year-old male. Before I officially booked the Airbnb that we would all be splitting the price on, I sent each of them the listing, showing how many bedrooms, what accommodations, etc. I made sure to double check with my brother as the house is only 2 bedrooms. One room has 2 full-size beds, the other a king bed. I asked if he would mind sharing a room with me, as 3 bedrooms in this area were harder to find. He said it was fine because we'd each have our own bed, and asked me to book it. Once our parents signed off on it, I booked it. When we arrive, before we even have our first night's sleep, my brother declares he thinks he and I should alternate sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room. I say I'm not going to do that. If he doesn't want to sleep in the room designated for us, that's fine. But I'm not sleeping on a pull-out on vacation when there's 2 beds. I asked why he doesn't want to share a room and why this didn't come up sooner. He said we were adults and he was too old to share a room. I asked why he didn't bring this up sooner. He said he figured I'd agree to the pull-out situation. I said he shouldn't have assumed, or at least had a conversation with me. He kept insisting and I said no. If he wants to sleep out there our whole vacation, fine. But I'm not alternating when I paid for a bed. Him sleeping on the pull-out led to several conflicts with our parents, as he would get mad if they came into the living room in the morning while he was still sleeping. But as they pointed out, it's the living room, a public space. If people wanted to hang out in the living room at night, he'd start bugging us to go into our rooms so he could sleep as early as 8 p.m. We're on vacation, we're going to stay up a little later and hang out. I always offered to let him sleep in the extra bed in the room, but he refused unless I promised that I would sleep on the pull-out that night, which I didn't do. By the end of the 7-day, 6-night trip, he was irritated with all of us over this. My parents and I feel that he's the one who put himself in the situation, and that there was an alternative to him sleeping on the couch, but he chose not to. However, my brother is insisting that I should have swapped with him. Am I the jerk for not sleeping on the pull-out? Opie's obviously not the jerk here, and they're absolutely right all throughout this story. They should have spoken up if they had a problem with it. And also, I just cannot avoid asking, why are they so against sharing that room with their sibling? It doesn't matter if you're an adult. There's 2 beds, it's not even like you're sharing the bed. Shoot, me and my siblings are well adults, I wouldn't have a problem sharing this same bed. Like, what's the actual issue? He can't even argue it's like a privacy thing or that he wants to sleep in the buff or something because he's sleeping in the living room as an alternative. Miss Finch87 wrote, "Not the jerk, your brother was a jerk. He willingly agreed to the sleeping arrangements as part of the booking process. It was crucial to it being booked. That he withheld his alternative plan of you two switching off on arrival is just plain weird, given he had every chance to have this conversation. He was always welcome to the second bed, as agreed. But nonetheless, he proceeds to behave like a stroppy toddler about the whole thing, and about people utilizing the living room he subsequently decided to sleep in. He own goaled himself all the way with this one." Bitter Position 7040 added, "Agree. Not only did the brother disrupt the vacation sleeping arrangements, but he also took over a common space meant for everyone to share. One of the perks of a common living space is that it allows for people to have different sleeping and waking times. He doesn't have a right to tell people they need to leave the common space for him to sleep or avoid it when others wake up first." Our next story is, am I the jerk for shrugging when my dad's wife told me they need all of dad's money right now? I, 17-year-old male, might be the jerk, and I might be a big one, but I wanted to get people's insight. So my dad left my mom when I was 14 to be with his wife / the woman he was cheating on my mom with. My dad didn't want me to think badly of him, but I did. He knew I did, and he knew he couldn't change my mind easily. We always knew my parents would end up with shared custody until I was 17 at least. From experience, the judges in family court will only stop enforcing shared custody when a kid turns 17 and speaks out. Any younger and they insist on 50-50. I also knew mom would struggle on her own because while she did work, she never made as much as my dad. She also wouldn't get child support because of the 50-50, and it wasn't ordered even with the differences in income. So when Dad pleaded with me to give him a chance to show he could still be a good dad and said he would do anything for me, I told him to keep supporting Mom and make sure she wasn't going to end up struggling while he got off easy. I told him she deserved that at least after what he did, and that I deserved to see my mom as well. My dad agreed and he paid it as child support instead of spousal support or whatever it's called. It really helped Mom and she actually went back to school so she could get a better job. Dad is still paying that money. He knows I appreciate him doing it, and he also knows it's one of the only reasons I didn't just decide to say freak him and never want a relationship again. My mom is also less stressed. She has mixed feelings about my dad giving her money when legally he doesn't need to, but she also knows this is the only way for me to not feel the need to help support her. Where my dad's wife comes into it is this. She never liked that my dad paid this child support. She never liked that I insisted on it for my dad and I to have a relationship. But now my dad's house is struggling a bit and some changes need to be made. His wife's son and daughter were in dance, football, softball, karate, music lessons, and an art class as paid extracurriculars. My dad and his wife will also have a baby together. The wife's kids had to cut 2 activities because they couldn't afford it anymore. It upsets his wife because if dad wasn't paying the money, they could still afford those things. She told me I should stop obligating my dad to support Mom because they need it more and my mom isn't their problem. I told her she and her kids are not my problem. She told me they're my family while Mom is not her or her kids' family or my dad's anymore. I told her she and her kids are Dad's family but not mine. She told me they need all of Dad's money right now before more things need to be cut back on. I shrugged in response. She told me I was so callously flippant, and it wasn't a good look to care so little about my siblings' lives. Only one of her kids, the baby, is technically my half-sibling. Am I the jerk? I don't blame OP, and I have respect for them for saying, you need to pay some kind of child support, and if not, you're basically dead to me. And bottom line, it's never like OP said that the dad has to do this. He clearly wants to for the sake of keeping that relationship. OP themselves has nothing to argue about. ZLittle16 wrote, absolutely not the jerk. Dad didn't have to agree to pay your mom to buy your acceptance, and stepmom should have spoken up then if it was a problem. She probably did but didn't push it so Dad's conscience could be eased. Stepmom is just paying the price for cheating with a married man, and Dad is suffering for his part too. Karma is a bench. OP responded saying, I think it's more likely she spoke up. Dad did it anyway and she was like, freak it. Not going to end things now when we come this far. Maybe she thought it wouldn't last as long, but I think there's a reason she wants the request to stop to come from me. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my dad to freak off and throwing his stepdaughter's father in her face? When I, 25-year-old female, was 10, my mom died. When I was 12, my dad remarried. Dad's wife has an 11-year-old daughter. Her dad had abandoned her. Dad went from being an okay but not great dad to me, to focusing so much on his stepdaughter that there were times he forgot about me. After one incident where he literally left me behind in a mall in another state, he acted like he felt so bad that he took me out as a sorry on his stepdaughter's birthday. From that day onward, she and I could not stand each other, and we really don't wish the other well. We both want the other to go away and we stay away from each other where possible. She told me I hadn't deserved an apology because she needed his attention and love more than I did. This happened twice more where Dad would apologize and it would hurt his stepdaughter. But generally, I got used to being the one he put last. I put distance between us after I left for college, and after a couple of years, he realized it was happening and he begged and pleaded with me to try and forgive him. I told him how much it hurt for him to prioritize his stepdaughter so much. I brought up being left behind, the fact that he would promise me a certain gift and then get it for his stepdaughter instead. All the times he took off work to support her and would miss all of mine. I told him how it made me feel and that it made me not want him around after a while. He made a big effort to be there for me in the last 3 years especially, and he was doing a lot better. He showed up a little more and took a more active role again. Then during a lunch where he surprised me by bringing his wife and stepdaughter, we were talking about my upcoming wedding, and he asked me to change the date because his stepdaughter wants to book her wedding for this year and the only date is the same as mine. He told me I was willing to get married next year so I could still change it now and have time. My wedding is scheduled for December. I asked what he was talking about. His stepdaughter said Dad needs to be at her wedding because he's giving her away, and if I want him to do the same, which he already agreed to, I need to change or he'll be going to hers. I asked Dad if that was true, and he said it doesn't have to be. I asked him if he would choose her wedding over mine, and he said yes. So I told him to freak off and forget about coming to my wedding. Then I looked into his stepdaughter's stupid, smug face and told her to enjoy my dad, since her own never wanted her and never loved her, but at least mine had been good to me before her. I also told them that I hope my stepsister's dad came back and she dumped him for the real one since he dumped me for a fake. Dad texted me dozens of times after the lunch, saying I reacted too spitefully, and his stepdaughter did nothing wrong, and I made her cry in a cafe full of people. So although I think what OP said was a very stinging thing to say, I feel like it was kind of just a massive truth bomb, and I don't blame OP, and I really don't think OP is the jerk. It was really like a culmination of years of frustration and being turned away and put second or even lower than the stepdaughter. Horsey Girl WH wrote, I'm really hoping this is a fake post, because I can't imagine that the only date the stepdaughter could have picked had to be the one day you picked for your wedding. It sounds like it's time to block your father if he chooses his stepdaughter after this. I'm so sorry your mom died. I'm a mom and I'm sending you virtual hugs. I hope your future in-laws will take you in and love you like you deserve. Of course you're not the jerk. OP responded saying it was so intentionally done by her. She had months to book if she was that determined to get married this year. She just wanted to make this a choice again and he chose. She can keep him now and he should forget I exist. My future in-laws are super sweet. And I have my grandma who's the best and I'm seeing more and more how amazing she is. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling my sister-in-law annoying and telling her I'm tired of hearing her joke about me having a girl's name? My wife and I have been together since we were 19 and we're now 32. I met her family after we'd been together a year. Sister-in-law was actually the first. Very first time we met, she blurted out that I have a girl's name, Sky, and then proceeded to laugh about it. My wife told her to shut up and stop laughing. It didn't bother me at all back then. I just laughed and told her there are plenty of male Skys around, even my great-grandfather who I was partially named after. I was named after my great-grandpa Skylar, who went by Sky his entire life, and Sky Masterson from Guys and Dolls. So the first time was no big deal. Some people have asked me before if I felt like my name was a girl's name and not a guy's name, and I never minded. Sister-in-law joked a lot about my name and our kids' names when we were expecting our babies. It got a little annoying, but, you know, I was able to brush it off and my wife would cut off her sister and would tell her to leave if she went a little too far, which only happened once back then. We didn't see her a lot for a while, but she got engaged last year and was around more, and seemed to have calmed down a lot. And now she's having her own baby, a girl, and oh boy, she really is testing my patience. It started with her husband asking what she thought of the name Sky for their daughter. She joked that they couldn't use the name because she didn't want me to feel more like a girl than I already do. My wife told her to grow up and we left. Next time we saw her, they announced Sky was the name they decided to go with. I said, cool. Sister-in-law said she was surprised I was okay with sharing my name with a girl. I told sister-in-law her daughter wouldn't be the first, and I wasn't insecure in my masculinity, and I saw no problem with sharing the name girls or women. Next time we saw them, it was a joke about putting both Skys in pretty pink dresses when her daughter is born. We stayed out of her way for the rest of that visit. Then she joked that I'd finally gotten embarrassed by my name and was using my middle name, because one of my uncles who always called me by my middle name was visiting and she heard him call me that. More stuff like that happened, and then Saturday we were back at my in-laws' house for mother-in-law's birthday. And sister-in-law was joking with some of the mother-in-law's siblings about my name, and she tried to involve me by calling me over to tell her dumb jokes. It finally got to me, and I asked her, does she have to be so annoying? I told her how tiring it is to always hear her dumb jokes, which aren't even really jokes like she claims, but insults directed at me. She called me sensitive, and I told her she's the person who hasn't given up on my name in over a decade. I told her everyone gets it. She sees Sky as a girl's name, but she's not funny. My wife told her that she was about to become a mom and really needed to listen to us and grow up. We've told her to stop saying this crap in the past too. She always says she's just joking. Am I the jerk? OP's not the jerk, and I think OP had a pretty mature response, but yeah, after so many years of hearing this same thing, how are you not going to get tired of it? And maybe to the sister-in-law, it doesn't seem like so much because it's spread out over so many years, but when your entire relationship over like a decade of knowing this person, anytime you see them, it's just, haha, girl's name. The sister-in-law needs to have the wherewithal to realize that OP's only conception of sister-in-law is the person who relentlessly makes fun of their name any chance they meet. How cool of a sister-in-law is that? Cake Fool wrote, not the jerk, but you're doing this wrong. Start going hard on that the baby girl will have boy names and she's going to be named after you. When the kid's born, make sure everyone knows kid is named after you. Subjective Box added, named after her uncle. Uncle is very proud for her to have his name. Very proud at every corner. Bonus points for always referring to sister-in-law as so progressive. For no reason, but as often as possible. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling the bride I don't want to wear the bridesmaid dress chosen for me? I, 40-year-old female, was invited to be a bridesmaid for my good friend who I'll call Beth. 32-year-old female, we've been friends for almost 8 years after we met at a support group. I happily agreed to be Beth's bridesmaid, and I assumed I'd be one of many. However, Beth told me her friend just had a baby, and her other friend will be having gallbladder surgery at that time. So it'll only be me, her 3 younger sisters, and her sister-in-law. I was okay with this at first, until I actually saw them. They look very, very young. They're all between 19 to 28 and they're extremely slim. I look much older than all of them. That made me feel pretty uncomfortable. On top of that, she allowed her sisters to choose the dress, because I wasn't able to go with them to the appointment as it was too early for me. The girls chose this sexy, silky satin dress that looks very, very tight on their bodies, which on them looks fantastic as they're young with younger bodies, but on me, it will look terrible. I just know it will. I was very nice and told my friend that I'd like to choose a dress that would be more flattering to my body type, as I'm older and bigger than her sisters. It'll be the same color and fabric, just something that I want. My friend was annoyed and said her sisters chose the dress themselves and already purchased it. It's done. We went back and forth for several hours. I was trying to make her understand my point. I will be the oldest one there. Everyone's going to look at me and compare me to her younger, slimmer sisters. I don't want that kind of attention. My friend was irritated and said that her fiancé is also in his 40s and his 5 groomsmen are between 40 to 50 years of age. On top of that, her sister-in-law is actually 47, she just looks good for her age. That made me feel even worse. She goes, everyone is different ages and sizes, and I need to let it go. I thought we were making some headway and she was gonna let me choose a different dress until she left a nasty voicemail early this morning. She told me to get the dress or I can't be part of it anymore. I'm adding too much stress to her wedding over stupid insecurities and that her family isn't there to see me or to see what I'm wearing or how I fit into the dress. They're there for her and her husband. So either I show up as a bridesmaid in the dress or I show up as a guest. And if I don't get with the program, she'll have her family member take my place. I feel she could have said it nicer than she did. She was very nasty towards me. I also feel she's not being sensitive. I decided to remove myself as a bridesmaid since she won't be flexible, but my husband said I was very rude. Am I the jerk? Like, I get it, OP obviously is very self-conscious. They don't want to stand out, they don't want to be perceived negatively. I get it, but at the end of the day, this is kind of OP's major insecurity, and it's not really fair to the bride for you to try to manipulate their wedding and the bridesmaid's situation because you have these insecurities. I suppose my question for OP is, say they get the dress, they show up, they be the bridesmaid, do they really think at the end of the day when everybody goes home they're going to be saying, you know, that one bridesmaid was so much more X than all the other slimmer younger bridesmaids? Or do you think they're going to be more fixated on, oh, that was such a beautiful wedding, oh, I hope they're so happy together? I'm thinking it's more the latter, and honestly, if this isn't something OP can get over, for the bride's sake, drop out. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.